Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stock Market Today for Tuesday, May 6th. It's Alissa Coram here. We saw stocks easing ahead of the Fed meeting tomorrow, or the conclusion of the Fed meeting tomorrow, and a lot of earnings continuing to hit the street, and reactions are pretty interesting. So we'll check in on some of the movers there. And joining me now to discuss is my colleague, Ed Carson. Ed, it's great to see you.
Great to see you, Ali. I want to take a look at Palantir, Robinhood, and Verona Pharma.
Okay, we'll take a look at those stocks. But first, let's analyze the major indexes to give us that much needed context for where we're at in this market. So the NASDAQ today down about 0.9% by sessions close, and really interesting to see a little bit of selling in the final 10-15 minutes or so. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 down 0.8% on the day, the Dow down almost 1%, and the Russell 2000 down about 0.9%, headed into the final stretch of the day. So, Ed, we know that heading into today and really this week, we had two back-to-back weeks of stellar gains, and now we've come up to levels where it makes sense that we would see some sort of pause or pullback. Is the pullback that we are seeing now constructive or concerning?
I don't think we know yet. I mean, it doesn't seem that bad so far. It doesn't seem concerning yet. We just don't know if it's the start of something that will be concerning. The Nasdaq and S&P were getting above the 50-day lines, above their 200-day lines. The Nasdaq 100, the Qs, actually touched the 200-day line on Friday before pulling back. So you were right at those levels. Pausing here, yeah, could be very constructive. We could have handles. We could have stocks, pulling back. Some other stocks could move up and have relative strength. So there could be a lot of things if we pause right here and then punch higher. Just the question is, this is also would be a great place for the market to roll over. I mean, this is often what happens in bear markets. You come up to the 200-day line, and then things
Mhm.
go on again. So we don't know. Obviously, we have to see what tariff news and other things but I think it's like you definitely, as David Ryan was saying on IBD Live today, you don't want to get locked in to a bullish or a bearish mindset. Uh, because if you would stay bearish, you would have missed out on some moves here. If you stay bullish and the market sells off, you could quickly see a lot of losses.
Mhm. Yeah, well said. So we'll stay nimble for now. On the upside for the NASDAQ, we'll keep an eye on that 18,000 level and the 200-day line below us, that 50-day and the 21-day as our potential support levels. So if we start breaking through those, then yeah, I feel like that definitely increases the odds that we could be in for a test of the follow through day, or even the ultimate lows from early on in April, or just a lot of choppy volatility. So we'll have to see what happens there. And then with the S&P 500, what levels are you looking at here? It seems we're between the 200-day on the upside and the 50-day on the downside.
Same kind of thing, and you like to hold that. And if you can't hold the 50, at least the 21-day and the 5,500 level. After that, you really start getting a little more concerned. And even if the market comes back, probably there's a good chance some of the stocks you bought in the last few days would be starting to
Exactly.
get in real trouble. So you're going to need to take action. You want to have your exit strategies ready. Yes, we might have new setups, but you definitely have to be thinking at the same time, being flexible and being ready to act in either direction.
Yes. Okay. And the Dow, in terms of resistance, pretty clear at that 50-day line there, bumping our heads and then backing away.
Yeah, the Dow technically was below it yesterday, but now is clearly below it, and the Russell 2000 fell below the 50-day line as well. So just that's not great to see. These have been laggards, but it does show you that they're struggling at weaker resist not at weaker levels.
Okay, a couple of ETFs to check in on before we move on. Gold, look at this, Ed. Are almost back to new highs. GLD up 2.8% today, kicking off the week in a strong way. It's already up almost 6% for the week.
Yeah, really impressive move. Not necessarily what you want to see for everything else, because this is usually a bad sign for the market. It does show you that there's some worries out there, whether it's
Mhm.
about growth, about the dollar, about inflation. But there was definitely an opportunity here, but Yeah, not a great sign for the rest of the market.
Yeah, we did get that pullback and test of the 21-day line. And typically, especially after the kind of move that we saw in gold and the acceleration, you would think potentially the likelihood of more of a base pattern or developing over a couple of weeks could be likely, but like you said, with investors fleeing to, or flocking to gold, it just underscores that we are still in that environment filled with a good amount of uncertainty. Elsewhere, let's check out the IGV ETF. This is tech software, down 1.4% on the day. So a little bit of a bigger hit than your tech heavy NASDAQ index, but it's seen some strong gains lately and it's gotten above a lot of key levels that we're keeping tabs on.
Yeah, and I sort of tested if you want to see this as a double bottom. There's a lot of these double bottom slash cup bases, and this is sort of held above that level. So that's nice to see. And this sold off. Think this came down with Palantir coming off quite a bit. The Palantir is a pretty big member, and there's some other stocks that came off. So actually didn't do too badly, all things considered.
Yeah. Great point there. And one more thing we want to check in on before we take a look at those stocks, and that is KWEB, the China Internet ETF. Notable action here today with a move above the 50-day line, up 1%. So this is also making a comeback uh, and a notable move here in terms of the technical level it took out today.
It's like one of those like a 7-layer cake. How many layers of risk do you want? That's the question because this does look interesting. Its two top components, Alibaba and Tencent, look fairly similar, not shocker. They both have earnings next week. They're both sort of above their 50-day lines move there. So there's some nice action, but risk on risk on risk. But which is one way. I also almost looked at Alibaba for this event, but it's just like I'll do something a little, maybe
Mhm.
only 5 levels of risk. How about that?
Right. We did see a 1 day decline of almost 10% in BABA on April the 4th. And the KWEB ETF took almost as big of a hit that day. So it just goes to show you that, I mean, these China stocks, you have a lot of volatility, high risk, but sometimes, if you can play them right, high reward, but it's not for the faint of heart.
No.
Okay. Let's take a look at some stocks. You mentioned Palantir, one of the big earnings movers today. Full disclosure, I do own a position. Ed, I can't remember if you were in this stock as well.
I was earlier, and then I got shaken out when the first time I went above the 50-day line when it sort of formed the middle of that, what ended up being the W actually over there. And I got out and I did not get back in time. That's where I think was the buy point. That was to me clearly the buy point. It was getting pretty extended. I mean, the report was pretty good. Yes, you could find little things that weren't absolutely perfect, but I think people were looking for perfection.
Yeah.
Still, we went at 87% from the lows in early April to where we were on Monday. And so now it's down 12%. But I mean, that's not that bad all in all. It was a pretty good report. It found support at the 21-day line. Now, it sometimes what'll happen is you find support one day and then the next day you do not. So we'll see. I think if it falls through there, I mean, I think investors could have taken profits ahead of time, recent investors. But if they didn't, at this point, well, you can see, can it hold the 21-day line? And if it can't, then you're really starting to probably cut a really into those gains. There might be, it's possible a handle will form, but right now it was nice to see it find support. Not great to see that big of a loss, but it's also putting in context. I think it's okay.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And that's my game plan as well. I was buying around 100. So I want to see that support at the 21-day line. I did opt to hold my position into the report versus hedge with an inverse ETF or short, a long, double long ETF, that kind of thing. But factoring in the cushion as well as the expected move. I think the options market was pricing in a move either direction of about 13%. So even though it's never fun to see a 12% decline, it was within that expectation. And you're exactly right. Stopped right where you would want to see. And so I think that's what's going to make the next couple of days critical. Can it continue to find support at that 21-day line? If not, then maybe it needs more time to form a base next to base, perhaps. And in terms of the numbers, revenue was up 39%. That did mark another quarter of acceleration. It does look like we did get a slight slowdown in the earnings growth, adjusted EPS of 13 cents. I believe that was the adjusted number, up 63%, down from 75%. So, yeah, expectations quite high here, Ed. I believe they did also raise their guidance, but I do think the next couple of days will be key for this stock to
Yeah,
see
I
if
think
some buyers will step in. Okay, moving on. Hood. This is Robinhood reversing higher on the day, Ed, up 1.3%. This is another high octane stock that
yeah.
had a great move November, December, January, and then took quite a big haircut from February to April. Sort of a double bottom with handle, I believe, is something that you're looking at here. Tell us more.
Yeah, it is. I think technically it is high enough to work. That W is just high enough in the base. And this is a handle that's forming here. On a weekly chart, it's already there. It's not going to show up because it's not showing up as a base because it's so deep and radical, but that is
Right.
there. One more day and it would have a handle on a daily. Yeah, as in, like this is so can drop so fast. It fell almost 50% in like 2 or 3 weeks. It ultimately fell more than 50%. So just like with Palantir, yeah, these high octane names, if the market goes south or if people sour on this stock specifically, it can fall in a real hurry. So just knowing that, I think, yeah, I think that downward slope is probably the way to go. If you can find an early entry within the handle,
Mhm.
that would be way to go. It was nice to find support here. The 21-day line, the past couple days, there was earnings, there was, some metrics that weren't perfect, but it was still a pretty good report. And just has to see it. But it is definitely a lot of risk involved. And if you want the market tailwind, if the market can bounce back, or if the market can just pause for a couple more days and then it goes, that would be great. This may be one of the
Mhm.
setups we're talking about with the market
Right.
pausing. If the market falls, though, I mean, yeah, it was a nice upside reversal too, but chances are Hood is not going to resist that, just like almost any other stock. But one to
Mhm.
watch. But yeah, a lot of risks involved as well.
Yeah, for some of the leaders and these high octane names that can produce that powerful growth, we're looking for those signals underneath the surface. In addition to how the indexes are acting, all right, well, how are these stocks acting? So, support here as the market digests the big move over the last couple of weeks is going to be key. Moving on, let's take a look at VRNA. This is Verona Pharma, a recent breakout for a stock that showed some powerful bottom line growth, although it was, turning from a negative to a positive. But we do have some pretty explosive estimates, Ed, for full year earnings coming up here as well. And this is a breakout that is holding up well as the market's pulling back, down 3% today, but still just right at that 10-day moving average.
Yeah, so technically it's just below the buy point now. This was our stock of the day. There was some really strong volume on the earnings. Not surprising in that front. The pullback has been on relatively light volume. So yeah, I mean that buy point is definitely actionable. You could also use the recent action as sort of a high handle, though I generally try to go as tight as possible, especially where the market is back and forth. You want to get in
Yeah,
my opinion, get as early of an entry as you can
right.
so if there's an upswing, you can get it and maybe withstand any pullback if there is one. And so yeah, I like the fundamentals. I like the growth is starting to come in. There's just coming in first 3 months, full 3 months of a drug. That's why they're
Mm,
basically had no revenue, and suddenly their revenue is coming in, and you can see that revenue is coming in, coming in, coming in over the next few quarters. So that's what's going to drive that stock going forward. Nice to see an actual drug approved as opposed to where I mean, there's always the risk that the next drug or a new indication will fail something, but it's just nice to have a new drug out there. So a little bit of safety on a biotech.
mhm. Okay, well, shall we check in on some earnings movers out after the bell, Ed?
Yeah, I mean, most of these are not really in position. Tempest, TEM, this one made a big move. It's now up nicely. I don't know what you do with this, even if it made it got above these levels, but but that's something there. Um, Upstart Holdings, which had been trying to make some moves, That one is not up, it's down. So if you thought there was going to be an early entry, that is not the case. Coupang, CPNG, South Korean e-commerce firm, this is moving its way up. It's down a little bit, not the worst, but you'd like it to find support there. And there's other things out there. I think Arista Networks, I always used to like follow this one, but it has not come back the way it's coming up to the 200-day line. I don't know. It still has a
Yeah,
lot of
big
overhead
character
resistance there.
change.
Yeah, big character change. I haven't looked at the numbers, and there's probably a lot of others out there, but still a lot of earnings movers. But those were some of the movers I saw
Mhm.
overnight so far.
Great. And then Ed, before we wrap, just thoughts on how to handle the Fed news tomorrow.
Yeah, there's so much going on. Sometimes I forget about that. Yeah, but the Fed is probably not going to. They're not going to do anything. The question is, what will Fed Chief Powell say? And I think you just have to be. He might be not quite as hawkish as he sounded a few weeks ago, but there's so much going on that he's probably not going to be like trying to make anything decisive. He's probably still going to say, "I'm still waiting for more clarity." So it's really the market reaction to what, just these little vague tonal shifts that
Mhm.
is going to matter. And I definitely wait until he sort of gets in there and you start seeing the market move on that. And it may be that we don't really know until Thursday. There's often a day two reaction. I can definitely imagine people digesting and say, well, on second thought, I really feel good or really feel bad about what he had to say.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we will be watching to see how the market reacts as well as leading stocks. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone for tuning in. That is it from us for today, but we will be back with more tomorrow morning on IBD Live. Investors.com/IBD Live for all the details. Also, want to flag tomorrow afternoon at 5 p.m. Eastern on our weekly Investing with IBD podcast. We will be welcoming Mark Minervini back to the show. So, we know that he is an investing champion and market wizard who is widely followed. And we're really looking forward to getting his updated perspective on how he's handling the market at this very critical juncture. So look forward to that. You can subscribe to our channel to get notifications whenever we go live at 5 p.m. Eastern for our podcast on Wednesday. So we'll see you there, everyone. And then we'll see you back here tomorrow right after the close.